Share your story of seeing a cryptid or mysterious creature.
So, my creepiest encounters with UFOs are wild, and I'm not alone in this. The first time was about 7-8 years ago, flying home from LA with my brother. We were only 20 minutes in when I spotted a black disc-shaped object zipping by us. I tapped my brother and pointed, and even the woman next to us leaned over to see. Just then, the pilot joked about racing another flight nearby. Moments later, that object shot off like a sonic boom, and another plane zoomed past us. Fast forward to a recent night during Army training. We were gathered outside, about 70-80 of us, when we all noticed strange lights in the sky. They moved in ways that didn't make sense, nothing like regular aircraft. We were all shouting, "Do you see this?" as it flew in erratic patterns before hovering motionless. Almost the entire platoon was captivated, and then, just like that, it vanished. It's moments like these that make you question everything. When I was in basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, we were in some of the oldest barracks still standing. It was a place where thousands of soldiers had trained, but it also carried a dark history. Just 3 years prior, someone had taken their life in our janitor's closet. One night, my bunkmate woke up for his fire guard shift and felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He spotted a tall, dark figure in the corner of the bay watching us sleep. He didn't say anything until morning, but once he did, the stories spread like wildfire. A holdover approached him saying, "So you're the one that saw it, huh?" He then walked to that exact corner and revealed that a previous private used to sleepwalk there, mumbling and staring into the darkness. A few nights later, during my fire guard shift, we heard dumbbells rolling around in our training room, even though no one else was awake. It was cold, and it was the middle of summer. The final straw came when a drill sergeant did an accountability check early one morning. She walked in and saw a private standing in that same corner. She yelled at him to go back to bed, waking him from a daze. Meanwhile, the guys on fire guard heard the bathroom door slam shut. But when the drill sergeant checked, the motion light hadn't even tripped. It was as if something was lurking just beyond our understanding, and we were all left wondering what we had really seen. I can think of 3 bizarre experiences from my childhood. First, when I was about 3, I had 2 imaginary friends, twin boys who looked identical, wore overalls, and were always dirty. One had a pitchfork, the other a shovel. They showed up at the foot of my bed every morning. Years later, I learned they were my great-grandfather's twin boys, who tragically died in an accident on the farm. Then, at 4, I woke up to find everything outside covered in blood. My swing set, the house, even the grass. My mom freaked out when she saw me covered in it, but we never found the source. No dead animals, nothing. Finally, there was the time I spotted a massive dark red figure looming over my sleeping dad. It had no face, just 2 circles for eyes and a growl that shook me to my core. I ran and hid, terrified. I still don't know what that was, and I've never seen anything like it since.
I live in New Mexico, and I often take walks to clear my mind. One evening, while exploring a familiar trail that starts after a metal bridge over a river, I noticed something unusual. As the sun set and the woods grew darker, I spotted a creature out of the corner of my eye. It looked like a large, hairless dog, but something was off. Its legs appeared damaged, making it waddle awkwardly away from the trail. My heart raced as I tried to make sense of it. It reminded me of a Newfoundland breed, but with no fur and oddly bent legs. Its mouth hung open, revealing small teeth, and it seemed completely oblivious to its surroundings, bumping into trees as it moved. I've never seen anything like it before, and I still can't explain what I witnessed that night.
In high school, I spent a lot of time at my friend's house, where his Pomeranian was fiercely protective of me. One night, we were deep into Guitar Hero 3, jamming on the new Dragon Force DLC, when 3 friends suggested we grab burgers. I went while my friend stayed behind. On our way back, he called saying he'd meet us halfway. As we walked, he mentioned a guy had been following him, but he disappeared. Then he heard this eerie cat-like meow and hiss. I shrugged it off, but as we passed a house, we all heard heavy breathing getting closer. We bolted back home, adrenaline pumping. Later that night, I was on a couch half asleep when I heard footsteps and someone struggling with the door. I thought it was my friend's brother, so I rolled over to help, but instead I saw the Pomeranian, except it was standing on its hind legs, towering at least 7 feet tall, with arms as long as its torso. I pulled the covers over my head, praying that this giant dog still liked me. That night was wild, and I still can't shake the feeling of that bizarre encounter. Growing up in northern Ontario, I heard wild tales about strange creatures lurking in the woods. One story that stuck with me was about the hairy man, essentially our version of Bigfoot. I always thought it was just a myth, until last year, when my friend and his family spotted it crossing the highway. They described it as a massive figure emerging from a ditch, and even a family in a minivan witnessed it too. When the police arrived, all they found were huge footprints and a smell like rotting garbage. Then there's the dinosaur sighting from about 70 years ago at a now abandoned town by a lake. An elder recounted watching what looked like a brontosaurus walking through the trees, its head towering above the canopy. It strolled to the lake and swam away, disappearing around a bend. Imagine that. A dinosaur right here in Ontario. These stories make you wonder what else might be out there, hidden in the wilderness. I live in northern Canada, where winter hits 50 degrees. It's a small city surrounded by untouched nature, and the nearest city is an 18-hour drive away. Last summer, my boyfriend and I drove to a remote lake to smoke. Halfway there, an overwhelming smell of rotten meat filled our truck. No cabins, no people around. It hit us out of nowhere, and I panicked, turning back. 10 minutes later, the smell vanished as quickly as it came. On the way back, we saw foxes just staring at us, and that's when things got weird. For weeks, I had intense nightmares. Every night, a dark shadow loomed over me, flipping me upside down or lifting me to the ceiling. I started avoiding sleep, feeling a dark presence around me that would just disappear. My family prayed for me, and I prayed every night. Finally, by December, it all stopped. No more nightmares, no more sleep paralysis. But those weeks still haunt me. I was 8 years old, spending summer vacation at my grandparents' cabin in the Jersey Pine Barrens. One night, while reading Archie comics by flashlight, I heard a scream that sent chills down my spine. It was unlike anything I'd ever heard, not a mountain lion or coyote. I turned off the flashlight, and the silence was deafening. Then, right outside my window, I heard sniffing and something that sounded like pebbles rolling on the roof. Terrified, I ran to wake up my grandpa. He checked outside but found nothing. The next morning, we discovered hoof prints the size of my fist leading right up to my window. I thought it might be a wild pig until I found more prints leading away in a straight line. When I told my dad, he casually said, "Oh, must have been the Jersey Devil." I had no clue what he meant back then, but that night stuck with me. I later read about the Jersey Devil in the library, and it sure sounded like what I encountered. I'd like to think it was just a pig, not some creepy hybrid creature. After that, I never went back to that cabin again.
When I was around 10 or 11, I was playing hide and seek with my younger cousin, who was about 7 or 8. We were super close, like brothers, and he loved the game while I was less enthusiastic. One day, I finally gave in and started searching for him. I checked every nook and cranny upstairs, convinced he was hiding there. But after a fruitless search, I headed downstairs. As I approached the living room, I caught a glimpse of something darting across the doorway. I thought I found him and rushed in, only to find the room empty. Confused, I searched every corner, but he was nowhere to be seen. Just then, I heard his voice coming down from upstairs, claiming he was hiding in the bedding cupboard. I was stunned. I had clearly seen a shape move, but it wasn't him. Whatever it was had vanished in an instant. That house had never been known for anything strange, aside from some weird plumbing issues. To this day, I can't shake the feeling that I saw something that day, something I can't explain. It left me puzzled, not scared, just wondering what really happened.
Growing up in Detroit, my brother and I always sensed something strange around us, but it wasn't until middle school that things escalated. One night, I woke up to a tall figure in a brown jacket and brimmed hat gliding towards me. I screamed for my parents, but they dismissed it as a nightmare. This happened multiple times, and while my mom started to believe me, my dad remained skeptical. When we moved to the second floor, the scariest encounter occurred. I heard a voice, distorted and backward, coming from our closet. My brother heard it too, and we were both terrified. Then, the door handle started shaking, and when it swung open, we saw nothing. But the door slammed shut, and we jumped out of bed, only to find nothing there. As time passed, the door would occasionally rattle, and friends witnessed it too. My mom finally believed us when she heard the closet door fly open and something run across the room. I often heard a little girl's voice, even whispering my name. We theorized that an old baseball bat from the early 1900s found in our house was connected to the spirits. After moving out, the Hat Man followed me. The last time I saw him was during a sleep paralysis episode, standing at the foot of my bed with two children dressed in old-fashioned clothes. I realized one was the girl who had whispered hi to me. They vanished, leaving me with more questions than answers.
I was about 10, hunting squirrels after school in rural Mississippi when I heard them calling from a grove of pines. The sun was setting, and in my excitement, I dashed straight across the field. Halfway there, a panther let out this chilling cry, like a woman screaming. My legs turned to jelly, and I dropped to the ground, clutching my gun, feeling both terrified and ridiculous. Heart racing, I tried to spot any movement, but all I could think was how I needed to get out of there. I crawled my way to the main road and walked home, shaken but intact. Fast forward to my mid-30s, I'm fishing in Titusville, Florida, feeling invincible in my 17-foot canoe. Suddenly, I roll up on a pod of sleeping manatees. I had no clue they were there. When they spooked, they slapped their tails on the water, launching my canoe 6 feet in the air at the front. My gear went flying, and even a bait fish soared over my head. I sat there, stunned, as the pod glided away, leaving me disoriented and almost sick with fear. For a moment, I thought I'd encountered something mythical, like Nessie and her kids.
I lived in a
dorm for 2 years that was haunted. It wasn't just me and my friends. Random strangers had experiences too. My first encounter happened during winter break when I was working the front desk. The elevators would randomly open and close, and I was the only one there. Then, over spring break, I heard whiteboard markers shuffling around in their box, but no one was there. I thought, he's probably just lonely. One night, my door started shaking. I brushed it off, thinking it was the vent, but there wasn't one near my door. I joked, "Hey, ghost, I'm trying to sleep," and it stopped. In the second year, things escalated. My backpack would get thrown off my bed, and stuff would be knocked off my desk. Never anything breakable, just enough to get my attention. One night, I woke up to a man's face right next to mine. It was unsettling, but I just stared and said, "Can we not? I'm really tired." Then rolled over and went back to sleep. When I'm groggy, I'm not scared of anything.
growing up in
Detroit, my brother and I always sensed something off. But it wasn't until middle school that things escalated. One night, unable to sleep, I saw a tall figure in a brown jacket and hat gliding toward me. I screamed for my parents, but they dismissed it as a nightmare. This happened multiple times, and eventually, my mom started to believe me. When we moved to the second floor, the scariest encounter hit. Lying in bed, I heard a voice, distorted and backward, coming from our closet. My brother heard it too. The door handle shook violently before the door swung open, but nothing was there. Then, a white cloud shot under our futon. Over time, the door would slam on its own, and my friends witnessed it too. My mom finally believed when she heard something run across the room while we were watching a movie. I often heard a little girl's voice, even felt her whisper hi in my ear. We theorized that an old baseball bat from 1901 was the source of the hauntings. After moving out, the Hat Man followed me into adulthood. The last time I saw him, he stood at the foot of my bed with two children dressed in old-fashioned clothes. One was the girl who said hi. Then, just like that, they vanished.
Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share and subscribe. The Internet Surfer on YouTube for more horror and scary stories.